I'm Rachel Monteleone and welcome to Kiddipedia, the podcast. I'm not an expert. However, I do speak with them with the view of providing you with expert information and advice to help you be the best parent that you can be. Together, let's give children the life they deserve and a positive future. Hello and welcome. Well, every experience in our lives and our perception of how positive or negative it was is relative to our personal opinion. You know, no two mothers have the same birth story and experience, and same goes for post-birth experiences too. Now, this is especially pertinent to mums who have had, unfortunately, a traumatic pregnancy, delivery, or post-birth experience, and that being for the baby and also for the mother. Well, today we're really honoured to speak with an inspirational mother who has experienced all of these things and is so kindly going to share what she learnt and, in hindsight, what she would have done differently. So to talk to us today, we welcome back Chrissy Regan. Now, Chrissy is the founder of Mindful Mums Queensland and author of the new book, Broken to Unbreakable, 12 Steps to Unbreakable Mind, Body and Spirit. Welcome back, Chrissy. How are you?
Great. Thank you so much. Lovely to see you. Your hair looks beautiful, by the way.
No, she's for everyone watching listening. Chrissy's just saying that because I was just saying here in Victoria, I haven't seen a hairdresser or my hairdresser for the last 4 months. So that's really lovely of you. Thank you so much. Now, there's lots to talk about. Before we do that, I just wanted to acknowledge that we published your article and the title is Mindfully Loving Your Newborn. Now, for someone who hasn't read the article yet, can you please tell us what it's about and what inspired you to write it?
Well, you very kindly invited me to participate in your newborn guide for 2020, and I wanted to make the most of that opportunity to share, my messages of mindfulness for mums. But ultimately, I wanted to find a hook that was a little bit different, an angle that was slightly maybe not discussed more broadly and widely in society. And one of the things that was true for me, which I've acknowledged and I wanted to share with other women, was the aspect of post-traumatic stress disorder for new mums. And we'll talk a bit more about that, but also how do we link mindfulness into it so that we can hopefully overcome some of our fears, our traumas, our stresses around difficult births and pregnancies. And as you mentioned, no two persons' experience is the same. And my feelings and understanding of trauma is different to yours. It doesn't lessen your experience. It doesn't make mine any worse for me. But trauma is trauma regardless of the degree of trauma. So since I've learned that, acknowledged that, and implemented the strategies around that for myself, I've had a huge shift in my health and well-being. And I really wanted to be able to bring that to life for other women through my own story and through where I've gone to since.
Yeah, and thank you for sharing this story and your stories with us today. Now, firstly, I wanted to acknowledge that in the article you kindly shared that you had lost one of your twins during pregnancy. With that experience, what would you like to share with us about that, and in that the information could help somebody in a relatively similar situation?
Well, I was not diagnosed. I was lucky enough to find out I had a twin pregnancy very early on. I had IVF treatment. Mm-hmm. So at 5-6 weeks, they could see 2 heartbeats. I saw 2 heartbeats. I had 2 scanned images of 2 little babies in their respective places with hearts beating. So that was delight, excitement. I had achieved my goal to become pregnant on my first cycle of IVF. And I had wanted to achieve a twin pregnancy, hence we implanted 2 embryos. And I was very optimistic and very excited about the prospect of becoming a mum of twins. So I started telling people that I was pregnant probably from around kind of 8 or 9 weeks because people knew I was having IVF, so I couldn't hide the secret really. And then when I went for my 12-week scan, they were doing the scan and I could see one little baby waving and then I could see nothing. And the sonographer kept going back to that place. And then she said to me, "What happened?" And I felt sick at that time because I didn't know what happened and I didn't know what she was looking at other than I could see this very small twisted pretzel as I described it. And so then she said to me, I started crying, laying on the table, just crying in floods of tears. And she said, oh, I'm sorry, it looks like one's gone. And then she went out of the room. And then she came back in, she finished the scan, did all the measuring, and then they took me to a room and I sat there waiting for a consultant to come and talk to me. And so I was just processing all that grief right there and then at that time, as opposed to going and seeing two little babies for my 12-week scan. I saw that I didn't have one. And then they were able to tell me that from approximately 9 weeks, the other one had stopped growing. So it was immensely devastating. And I didn't tell anyone. And I went home and I laid in bed and I cried for 36 hours and I got back up and I went to work as if nothing had happened.
Oh, goodness.
Because, I didn't know how to tell people. I didn't know. I hadn't told people I had a twin pregnancy, just that I was pregnant. So, there was that secret that I was carrying as well as my grief and the trauma around that moment, which was kind of like, unfolding in front of you.
Mm. So, I mean, when you did actually, well, first of all, thank you for sharing that. And I'm so sorry that you experienced that, Chrissy. I think a lot of the time when people hear news such as this, they can be lost to know what to say, but they have the best intentions to want to show support and their thoughts and their feelings. So I wanted to ask you, what do you feel are the best things to say to someone who has lost a baby? Is there anything in particular that you sort of felt comforting once that you did, tell people your story?
When I was told, like, it was a life that was gone, it was my baby that was gone. And, I had, what was very sad about that is that I couldn't feel joyful for the baby that I could see on the screen. So actually what I did 3 days later, I went and paid to have another scan in a private clinic so I could see my live baby and bond with it, because all I had done for the previous days was cry for the loss of the other baby as opposed to be joyful for seeing my living baby.
Yeah.
So, when someone said to me, that was a life that you lost and you're entitled to feel grief, you're entitled to feel sadness, you're entitled to feel overwhelmed, and, giving my feelings some labels like that, actually I found useful. And just saying to people, I'm so sorry for your loss. It's such a difficult thing to go to, and I'm giving you my love and support. And sometimes it's just as simple as that, because, knowing that someone actually is acknowledging your pain as opposed to going,
to acknowledge it.
Yeah. One baby. You'll have another.
But still to acknowledge the loss. So, I mean, things, for example, what are your thoughts on saying things like, if you don't feel like talking, we can just sit here and I can just sort of keep you company. I've got nowhere else to be. Maybe something like, what can I do for you? Is there anything else I can help? Even just the question, how are you feeling? So I think sometimes too, people don't want to open that door because they but it is a great thing to ask someone how they're feeling as well, sometimes, just to be able to acknowledge and show support. Another thing is, talk as long as you want. I'm here for you. I have plenty of time. Something like maybe anytime you need me, whatever time of the day, I'm here for you. And if you want to talk about the baby, I'm here to listen. So there's lots of things you can say empathetically to be able to show support. Now, following on from that, you mentioned in the article something that you suffered with ICP. Can you explain to us what that is and what was your experience of it also? Because this is something I've not heard of before.
It's interesting. ICP is short for intrahepatic cholestasis of pregnancy.
I'm glad that you pronounced that, because I had that in my notes and I didn't even go there. I looked at those big words and I went, I'm just going to let Chrissy talk about that.
It's a tongue twister, isn't it? But the simple words is obstetric cholestasis, or even shorter OC. So we often say OC or IPC because it's easier to say. ICP. But essentially that is a rare condition that affects your liver. Your liver goes crazy, poisons your blood, and that can pass into your placenta. So you have very elevated liver enzymes and bile acid. Now, I had my gallbladder removed when I was 21. I had very high doses of progesterone when I was on my IVF treatment. So I didn't have a gallbladder, so I had abnormal liver enzymes anyway, and B, I had these very high doses of drugs. So that was like a perfect storm in my condition. I think the challenge with this condition is that it's underdiagnosed in a lot of women until they have very late, and they may have had a stillborn baby or something actually tragic happens.
Right.
Now it's becoming more recognized. People are being looked for earlier. So the common symptom is itching. Your body starts itching because your liver is poisoning your blood, and your response is to develop this itchiness on your skin.
Wow.
Now,
I've just itched as you've said that. Sorry, but it's just one of those.
so extreme cases. My case was very, very extreme. So normal bile acids are 12, and mine were 175. So my first pregnancy, my case was so extreme they had to admit me to hospital, because I would lay awake all night just with this intense itch all over my body, my feet, and I was just going insane. The only way, and there's no treatment for it currently. So they give you a cocktail of drugs, and I was taking up to 16 different tablets throughout the day to try and minimize the symptoms, but there's nothing that they can really do for you. They try to get your pregnancy as far along as possible, but they also then try to deliver you at 37 weeks, because after 36 weeks, the risk to the baby is extremely high. If you leave it to 40 weeks, often the babies are stillborn. So I realized, I self-diagnosed myself with this illness at around 26 weeks. I felt intuitively that something was seriously wrong with me. I went to the hospital. I said, I think I have OC. They did lots of tests, and after several days, liver scans, all the rest of it. And I went back to the hospital every single day, and they said, we want to admit you. And I said, no, because I was spending my night sitting naked in front of a fan with a wet face cloth on my liver. My liver was burning. So it was very unpleasant. So you can imagine you can't sit around hospital naked in front of a fan with a face cloth on you.
Well, you can, but you just...
I did that in the comfort of my own home, but I lived near the hospital. I went there every day for monitoring. So there's a very good support group in the UK, which has now gone global and offers women around the world support for this condition. But at those days, there wasn't Facebook groups, so I was just Googling, itchy when pregnant, really itchy when pregnant, very itchy when pregnant. I feel like I'm going to die. I'm itching so much. And then I started to find deeper and deeper and deeper this condition. So I messaged the charity, and I said, so the charity were very good at advising me as to what questions and what to be saying to the doctors, rather than letting the doctors manage me. I managed the doctors. Once you've had it once, it's very likely you get it a second time, which means many women don't want to get pregnant a second time. With me, I was fortunate. I had a frozen embryo in the freezer, and I wanted to deliver that baby, so I put myself through it again. But I was much better at managing it the second time around as well.
So that being said, you had quite a traumatic pregnancy, and then following that, you also had a challenging birth, and as a result of that, I understand that you had experienced PTSD, and with that, I understand now it's recognised that women can experience PTSD as a result of trauma around the birth of their children. And PTSD is not just exclusively for people that we know of and generally associated with ex-service men and women. Postnatal depression is widely discussed, but postnatal PTSD is less widely discussed. So I'd love for you to explain to us, what are the symptoms of PTSD? What is it? How do we recognise it, and how do we overcome it?
Well, PTSD is post-traumatic stress disorder.
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't come on right away. It comes on a bit later after the event.
Mm-hmm.
So, I had to beg the doctors to deliver me at 36 weeks because I felt that my body was dying. I was that ill. And then they said, well, we will induce you. So they put me through an induction process. Now, I was a new first-time mum, a little bit naive about what inductions involved. But as soon as they gave me those drugs, my itching went even crazier. So then I had to negotiate a C-section. So I negotiated myself to get a C-section after I'd been induction process for 36 hours with nothing happening. And then they delivered the baby. I was sent to the ward, no aftercare in place. And the baby was 36 weeks, tiny baby, and the blood sugars kept going. So then they took her away from me and took her off to neonatal. And maternity was on level 4 and neonatal was on level 1 on the opposite side of the building. And I'd had a cesarean. So every 2 hours I'd have to walk down across, express milk, feed, change, walk all the way back, go lie down in bed for 20 minutes and then do it all again. And I did that for 2 days. Again, no one supporting me. But I didn't know any better, and I didn't know how to ask for help. And if you can imagine, you've already been sleep deprived for 5, 6, 7 weeks, and now you've got a newborn baby that's in a different part of the hospital. You're not functioning properly. So I wasn't functioning properly, and I didn't have someone to step in and to be my kind of aftercare support person to say, this is what's happened to this poor woman, and this is how we can help her. So I just thought I needed to manage it all on my own, and that's what I tried to do. So when I got home from hospital around day 8, and my child is beautiful, but she keeps me awake, she started choking. She would just choke for no reason. And I realized quite quickly that I was feeling constantly on edge. Like I was living on this constant edge of thinking that she was going to die any second I was not in the room with her.
Oh my gosh.
Very frightening. And so I'd gone through all of that, and then this happened, and then this happened. So just one compounding thing after another. And if you know anything about compound interest, it builds up. And I was in my kitchen one day, and I was emotional, having the baby blues, crying. But I suddenly felt intuitively, I think I have PTSD. And someone came over to make me lunch, and I said to her, I think I have PTSD. And she went, oh, don't be silly. And so I just dismissed it. And now, 5 years on, and I've researched this and I've read about it and I understand it and I've processed it, I realize I did have PTSD. And there was no aftercare for me in that time. And when I eventually presented to the doctor after 4 years of not sleeping and living in fear and with PTSD, I was prescribed antidepressants. And what I didn't need antidepressants. I needed sleep, pain relief, kindness, care, compassion, acknowledgement. I needed that, not antidepressants.
Yeah.
I felt that it was not fully understood. But yes, sorry.
No, don't be sorry at all. Unbelievable, your story. Well, in your article, you share your key learnings from that time, that in hindsight, that you would do things differently. I would love for you to maybe just share some of those with us now. Of course, we'll have a link to the article in the show notes, but if you could maybe just sort of go through those and just to tell us, what did you realize in hindsight and now, in actual fact, through this interview, can actually help others?
Well, this is 6 years ago now, so you would think it's quite a long time, but actually I really only started to recover from my PTSD about 2 years ago. And in going through the process of writing the book, and in all the work that I've done around mindfulness since then, I have become much more reflective on why I was feeling and thinking what I did around that time. So in hindsight, what I should have done was people come to you, your midwife comes to visit you at home after the baby, and they say, how are you feeling? Are you feeling depressed? Usually it's yes or no or whatever. We don't have aftercare stages for women. There's not a 3 months, 6 months check-in. Had a difficult time. Have you acknowledged you had a difficult time? Because I've met other women who've had a difficult time and they're just like, oh yeah, okay, I had a difficult time. I'm not, but that's not the same for you or for me. So, having this continuity of support where people check in on you and actually help you process what you went through, rather than 6 years later you having to unpick it yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So I asked for a proper review into my IPC, because when I was sent from surgery to the ward, there was not that continuity of care. And saying, okay, you've had IPC, you haven't slept for 7 weeks, how are you feeling? What can we do to support you? There was no one pushing me in a wheelchair from level 4 to level 1 to help me look after my baby. I did that on my own. and all of these things, and at one point after about day 5, I went into the sister's office and broke down and said, I just don't know what's happening. No one's talking to me. I'm very alone here. I had no family around me. And that was the other thing. Like I had, when people visit you, they're, excited you've had a baby, and you're excited you've had a baby. But all of the other stuff wrapped around that is kind of like, it's not really, I don't know, it's hard to describe it, because at the time as well, you're also kind of dismissing what's happened, because you're wanting to be a happy new mum. So a review would have been good. Aftercare systems would have been good. I was not good at asking for help because I'm a very capable and confident person, so I didn't ask for help. The newborn baby high masked my real feelings around my PTSD. I didn't talk about it with the midwives. I didn't talk about it in any follow-up appointments. I lived with this flight or fight, sleep-deprived, anxious state for 4 years and wasn't able to kind of move out of it. So now I've kind of looked at all those things in hindsight. I realised that I could have, done things differently.
Incredible. And since you acknowledged that you had suffered with PTSD after the birth of your first child, I understand that you found ways to grieve, heal, and just prevent further suffering. And some of the most useful methods that you found is using mindfulness and meditation. So could you just explain to us, for anyone that doesn't know or understand, what is mindfulness meditation and just what are the benefits? Because what you did experience is incredible, and to see that you have worked your way through that and really healed yourself through this is really incredible. So could you please just tell us a little bit about that?
Well, when I first discovered mindfulness 2 years ago, at the beginning of my journey to start repairing my mind, body and spirit, which was completely broken after so many years of no sleep, feelings of sadness and trauma, I realized that I had been living with fear. And the fear around losing the girls, and the fear around, stepping away from them, and one of them, dying basically. And so what I was able to do through mindfulness, it allows you to understand your thoughts better. And mindfulness gives you the tools really to look at what you're thinking about consistently, and to give those, and then to be reflective about that. So because I was living with an anxious mindset, because I've been living in fear, because I've been living with this trauma and this suffering, I was able to look at that really reflectively and go, okay, well, why is that the case? What are the feelings that come up for me? What are the behaviors that I've developed? And then I recognized that fear had played a very large role in my life, and I was able to thank fear, because it was fear that made me go to the doctor and say, I have ICP. It was fear that made me front up at 36 weeks and say, you need to take the baby out now, I'm dying. Oh. It was fear that kept my children alive. So I thanked fear for the help in keeping my children alive, but I didn't want fear in my life anymore. So I said, thanks, fear, take a holiday. I don't need you anymore. Mm-hmm. Once I started to thank the emotions and the feelings that had been driving my responses, and to acknowledge them for the role that they had played in my life, I was able to move through them and process them much quicker. And also, every time I have that feeling of grief for that lost baby, I let myself feel it. I don't suppress it anymore. If I want to cry at the traffic lights at 2:30 in the afternoon on the way to school, I cry at the traffic lights at 2:30. Every time, this dedication in this book acknowledges the role that she played in her life. And there's a huge amount of loss, but actually I thanked her for her sacrifice, because within her sacrifice, another miracle was possible, because if she hadn't sacrificed herself, the second one may not have survived either. So, I've just been able to be much more reflective about my feelings, my emotions, and to really be kind to myself, and to thank them, and to be honest, with myself as well.
Mindfulness for mums and dads, of course, undoubtedly is helpful for anyone who is sleep deprived and wants to sort of be in control. I'd love for you maybe just to sort of explain to us just the benefits that you found, and that you do list also in your article, of embracing mindfulness in your daily life.
Well, now when I wake up in the morning, regardless of how many hours sleep I've had, if it's 5 hours, I'm like, whoa, I had 5 hours. If it's 3 hours, I'm like, 3 hours. But before I open my eyes on the pillow, I think of the first thing I'm grateful for. So it might be I can hear the birds singing outside. I had 3 hours sleep. I had 5 hours sleep. I'm grateful that I have a comfortable bed to sleep in. I'm grateful that I have a safe place to live. I'm grateful that I have fresh food and water today to sustain me. So before I get out of bed, before I open my eyes, I think about what I'm grateful for. Because then as your day starts to feel exhausting, you then look back to what you're grateful for. That's the first thing. Second thing is I breathe deeply. So I reach down, I grab my solar plexus and I pull it all the way up and I push it down again. Because when we do that diaphragmatic breathing, it actually helps us process toxins in our body. It helps send nutrients to our extremities. It helps better oxygen move around our brain. So that diaphragmatic breathing is really helpful. So I bought myself this ring. It cost me $15 and it says breathe on there. And when I'm exhausted or the kids are screaming at me, I'm driving, I think to myself, just breathe, Chrissy, just breathe. And I keep that a consistent theme throughout my day.
Yeah, hang on just for a second. I'll give you an example. So you've got your ring. I've actually got a bracelet for something similar. And it's irrespective of what it is, it's just about wearing something every day that helps remind us of what we need to do in our daily lives that can sort of help. So I think the ring, a bracelet, it could be a hair elastic if you don't have a piece of jewelry. But I think it is really important to put that message out there that you can have something on you, that every time that you look at that is a symbol and a reminder of what you need to do to help you. So you instinctively know within yourself, like this particular bracelet I wear, giving you a bit of insight into me is just to ask for help, because I want, similar to you, I'm a doer. I'm always just doing, but I never stop and actually ask for help. So as your ring says, breathe, and my bracelet has got me as a reminder of what I need to do each day. I think it's a really powerful thing for everyone to decide what is it that I actually need to do, and have something on you that you wear every day, and every time you look at it, you spend that 30 seconds or however long it is, and just being mindful and practicing that, don't you think?
Visual cues are so important. And one of the other things I did in the early days was I wrote some little affirmations and I put them on my visor in the car. So when I get to the traffic lights, I'd drop it down because I had brain fog. I couldn't remember them. So may I be safe, may I be happy, may I be calm, may I live with ease. So when I start to feel stressed or anxious or fearful or worried or frightened, I just say to myself, may I be safe, may I be happy, may I be calm, may I live with ease. And repeating those things to myself actually helps switch off the stress response. So if I start to feel stressed up, I can switch it off. So that's another thing. And then also acknowledging your feelings. So each day I say to myself, how am I feeling? What does my body need today? And then my body intuitively tells me what it needs today, because I've developed that mind-body connection, which is so powerful through practicing mindfulness and meditation, because mindfulness meditation is about cultivating that body and mind and breath awareness. So you're actually more intuitive with your body and your energy and how it's feeling, and it allows you to experience life more fully because you're better connected with yourself.
The connectedness.
Exactly. And the thing is, we get so stuck up in our brain listening to what our thoughts are telling us. So we kind of need to say, okay, brain, thank you for the messages. I don't need to listen to you right now. You're not right about everything. And just be with your body and be with yourself. And it's allowed me to be more peaceful, to be calmer, to be more accepting, to allow the flow and the ebb and flow of energy. And indeed, motherhood is stressful enough, so parenting is stressful enough. So, yeah.
So all of these points you've listed in your article, which of course we will have in the show notes as well. Following on from this, I'd just love to know, what aftercare strategies do you think that we can put in place for new mums to assist them with their well-being right throughout motherhood? What are your thoughts?
Well, I've been thinking about this a lot lately, not just in respect of this interview, but just generally for women, because I think it's Mental Health Week, as you know, World Mental Health Week this week that we've just been through. So focusing on emotional health as well as mental health, because our emotions, are cyclical. Our emotions are sometimes linked to our hormones. So helping women understand hormone cycles, helping women understand their emotional health, positive psychology for mums. So, what can we do when these feelings and these thoughts rise up to the surface? mindfulness for working mums, and I find there's so much mental juggling around the working mum and the juggling of multiple children versus one child. And that's the other thing. There's self-care for single parents, self-care for parents of one child, self-care for parents of multiple children. And I think unless we're kind of really honest about that and to develop tools which help support people at different stages of parenting, different stages of mothering, then we're always going to overshoot the mark, because we're just going to be going, oh, mental health is depression or not depressed, but there's so much more in the spectrum of that, and emotional health and aftercare strategies at different stages of parenting is a big. But I'd love to see check-ins at 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, return to work, mums of multiples, and just really being much more open about the role of PTSD and aftercare for women.
And what you share with us today is incredible, and a real display of resilience and tenacity, with the view of just ensuring that you are being the best mother that you can be, and also just for yourself. So we've covered off a lot. I wanted to acknowledge and thank you for sharing your story with us. But if you were to summarize your key messages for anyone watching and listening, what would they be?
My goal was to be the best mum that I could be to 2 small children, but also not to be dependent on medications and drugs to help me function. Also not to be reliant on alcohol or other types of, stimulants or substances to help me feel good about my role as a mum and indeed health. And when I went through this process myself, I became very curious about what is the role of nutrition, what is the role of sleep, good sleep, quality sleep, what is the role of mindfulness, meditation, exercise. So I really was very curious about the holistic effects of our health and well-being, and how I could use all of those things to support me, not just now, but for the long term. I'm going to be a mum of teenage girls when I'm 60. The thought of that alone was enough for me to really prioritize my health and well-being, because I want to be the 60-year-old mum that's running up and down the netball court. I want to be that active mum who's there with them throughout their journey. And so really I'd wanted to do that without drugs, and to be healthy and happy and kind and as wise as I can be. So
thank you for sharing all of that. If mums, dads, anyone else has got any questions for you and or want to learn more about your techniques and your thought process, and of course if they want to purchase your book as well, whereabouts can they find you?
So on Facebook and Instagram, it's Mindful Mums QLD. My website is thewellnesspoet.com. I write wellness poetry as well as the book. There's 13 original wellness poems in the book to inspire you on the journey, and really they're around, acknowledging mindfulness, fear, uncertainty, our comfort zone, and to develop new strategies to help us live well for longer, which is what we all want to be doing ultimately. So, these wellnesspoet.com is my website, and you'll find a vast array, but also just reach out to me on email, mindfulmumsqld@gmail.com. Thank you.
I'll have all of those links in the show notes. Chrissy, you're a true inspiration. And once again, as I always am, really honoured to have you here on the podcast. And thank you again for your time. Take care, and no doubt we'll speak again soon. Much love. Take care.
Rachel.
Okay, bye. I'm Rachel Monteleone, and you've been listening to Kiddipedia, the podcast. You can have full access to Kiddipedia by visiting our website at kiddipedia.com.au or following us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. We're all here to help make the world a better place for our children and for generations to come. You can start today by helping us reach other parents by going to Apple Podcast, subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. Thank you for listening, and be sure to give my love to the kids.